Hello children, good morning. Today we are going to see the next part of the chapter gravitation. In the previous lecture we have seen what is meant by gravitation, then force and motion, difference between gravity and gravitation, then circular motion and centripetal force. Today we will see Kepler's three laws for planetary motion. Newton's universal law of gravitation and magnitude of centripetal force. Now let us see Kepler's laws. Planetary motion had been observed by astronomers since ancient times. Ancient times means in the olden days. Before Galileo, all observations of the planet's position made with naked eyes. Means before the scientist Galileo, all the observations about the position of the planets were made with open eyes. By the 16th century, a lot of data were available about planetary positions and motion. Johannes Kepler studied this data. So, by the 16th century, a lot of data were available for planetary position and motion. And these data were studied by Johannes Kepler. He noticed that the motion of planets follows certain laws. He stated three laws for describing planetary motion, and these laws known as Kepler's laws. So, information about planetary position and motion. After studying, Johannes Kepler understood that there is a motion of planets, and this motion of planets follows certain laws, and these laws are known as Kepler's laws. And these laws are describing planetary motion. Now next topic, that is, do you know? An ellipse is the curve obtained when a cone is cut by an inclined plane. So in the picture, cone is given, children. When we are cutting this cone with an inclined plane, that is with slanting plane, then we are getting ellipse. An ellipse has two focal points. Okay. So in the diagram, there are two focal points, that is F1 and F2. Okay. The sum of the distances to the two focal points from every point on the curve is constant. So when we are taking the sum of the distances from the two focal points to every point on the curve, that will be constant. Okay. Let us see. If A, B and C are the 3 points on the ellipse. See this diagram. Here in this ellipse diagram, we have two focal points, that is F1 and F2. Then A, B and C. These are the 3 points on the ellipse. So according to this, we can write that is AF1 plus AF2 is equal to BF1 plus BF2 is equal to CF1 plus CF2. Now, before going to start with Kepler's laws, we have to see, children, what is meant by orbit. So the curved path of a celestial object or spacecraft around a star, planet or moon, that is in a periodic elliptical revolution, that is called as a orbit. Means there is a curved path of celestial object, any, that is planet, moon or star, and they are moving in a elliptical revolution, in a periodic elliptical revolution, that is called as orbit. I hope, children, you understood what is the meaning of orbit. Let us see Kepler's first law. The orbit of a planet is an ellipse with the sun at one of the foci. Means there is a formation of orbit of a planet, and that is forming ellipse, and that time that sun will be at one of the focus point or focal point. Okay. So foci means what, children? That is focus point. And when orbit of a planet is there, then there is a formation of ellipse, and that time sun will be at one of the focus point. That is the Kepler's first law, and this law is also called as law of orbit. In the figure, the elliptical orbit of a planet revolving around the sun, and the position of the sun is indicated by capital S. Okay. Kepler's second law. The line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time. So, there is a line joining of a planet and the sun, and they are sweeping equal areas in equal interval of time. So, here when we are looking this planet and sun, so when they are forming equal areas, then they are forming these equal areas in equal time interval. Means that time and these areas both will be same. So let us see description for this. Let us see children this first diagram. Here in this first diagram, AB and CD are the distances covered by the planet in equal time. That is, after equal interval of time, the position of the planet starting from A and C are shown by B and D respectively. So here the position of the planet is starting from A and C, and that will be shown by B and D. So the straight lines AS and CS, the straight line AS and this CS, they are sweeping equal areas in equal interval of time. So the area ASB and area CSD both will come equal in equal interval of time. So here this law shows equal interval of time in equal area or equal area in equal interval of time. So due to that, this law is called as law of areas. Now next, Kepler's third law. Let us see statement for this Kepler's third law. The square of its period of revolution around the sun is directly proportional to the cube of the mean distance of a planet from the sun. So here we have to see square of the period of revolution around the sun, and that is directly proportional to the cube of the mean distance of a planet from the sun. So let us see how it is that. If r is the average distance of the planet from the sun and t is the period of revolution, then according to this law, we can say that t square is directly proportional. See that directly proportional symbol is there, children. T square is directly proportional to r cube. But we have to remove this proportionality symbol. So we have to put here constant k. So therefore, t square is equal to k into r cube. That is t square upon r cube. We are taking this r cube on this side, that is left hand side. So it will become divide. So t square upon r cube is equal to constant, that is equal to k. So this constant k is equal to means that is t square upon r cube is equal to constant k. This is equation number 1. So here there is a square of the period, and that is directly proportional to that mean distance of a planet. So this law is also called as Kepler's third law, that is law of periods. Means Kepler's third law is also called as law of periods. Now I hope children you all have understood all these 3 Kepler's laws. But now let us revise these laws again. Kepler's first law is also called as law of orbit. That is, it tells us that the planets orbit the sun elliptically. Means planets are orbiting the sun elliptically, means they are forming ellipse. Now Kepler's second law. This Kepler's second law is also called as law of areas. It states that a line connecting a planet to the sun covers an equal area over equal period of time. So the line joining to the planet to the sun, this line joining from the planet to the sun, that is covering equal area in equal period of time. Now Kepler's third law. This Kepler's third law is also called as law of periods. It allows us to establish a clear relationship between a planet's orbital period and its distance from the sun. Means there is a distance between this planet's orbital period, means planet period, and distance of the planet from the sun. So there is a relationship between both of these. So this law is also called as law of periods. Kepler obtained these three laws simply from the study of the positions of the planet obtained by regular observation. Means he stated this law simply by observing this planet. He had no explanation as to why planets obey these laws, and he don't have any explanation or any proof why these planets are obeying these laws. We will see how these laws help Newton in formulation of his theory of gravitation. Now, this law were helpful for Newton for formulation, means for the explanation of his theory of gravitation. So let us see Newton's gravitation theory. Now before starting with the Newton's gravitation theory, let us see the question based on this Kepler's law. If the area ESF in figure 1.4 is equal to area ASB, what will you infer about EF? Suppose this area ESF is equal to area ASB, then what you will say about EF? So if the area ESF in figure 1.4 is equal to area ASB, then the time taken by the planet to move from E to F equal to the time taken by the planet to move from A to B. Means this answer we can say with the help of Kepler's second law. Means the time taken by the planet to move from E to F is equal to time taken by the planet to move from A to B, because their areas are equal. Means the line joining the planet sweeps equal area in equal time interval. Means suppose their areas are equal, then they will take same time to move from one point to another point. Okay children, I hope you understood this answer. Now next topic, an introduction to scientist. Johannes Kepler was a German astronomer in the year 1571 to 1630, and he was a mathematician also. He started working as a helper to the famous astronomer, that is Tycho Brahe, in Prague in 1600. So astronomer, that is Tycho Brahe. Who helped this astronomer? That is Johannes Kepler. After the sudden death of Brahe in 1601, Kepler was appointed as the royal mathematician in his place. So after the death of Brahe, this Kepler as appointed a royal mathematician in his place. So Kepler used the observations of planetary positions made by Brahe to discover the laws of planetary motion, and he wrote several books on that. So his work was later used by Newton in postulating his law of gravitation. So after his work, means after Johannes Kepler work, these laws, means Kepler's laws, were helpful to Newton in postulating or in discovering law of gravitation. Now let us see Newton's universal law of gravitation. Let us see statement of this. Every object in the universe attracts every other object with a definite force, and this force is directly proportional to the product of the masses of the two objects and is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So according to this law, we can study this diagram first, and with the help of this we can write the explanation. Let us see two objects with masses m1 and m2, and they are kept at a distance d from each other. And there is a gravitational force acting between these two objects, that is capital F. So mathematically, the gravitational force of attraction between these two bodies can be written as, with the help of this law only, that is capital F is directly proportional to m1 m2 upon d square. Or if you have to remove the proportionality symbol, then we have to use here constant. So we can write F is equal to capital G into m1 m2 upon d square, and this is equation number 2. In this equation number 2, G is the constant of proportionality and it is called as universal gravitational constant. So the value of G was first experimentally measured by scientist Henry Cavendish, and the SI unit of this G value is 6.673 into 10 raised to minus 11 Newton meter square per kilogram square. So this value is universal value for universal gravitational constant. Now use your brain power. Show that in SI units, the unit of G is Newton into meter square per kilogram square. So this unit of G, that is gravitational constant, unit is Newton meter square per kilogram square, that we have to show, means that we have to derive. So according to Newton's law of gravitation, the gravitational force between two particles is capital F is equal to G into m1 m2 upon d square, where m1 and m2 are the masses of the two particles and r is the distance between them and G is the universal constant of gravitation. So we have to calculate here unit of G. So we have to rearrange this equation. So therefore G is equal to F into d square upon m1 into m2. So here the SI unit of force is Newton, that we know, and that of the distance is meter, and that of mass is kilogram, means for m1 also kilogram and m2 also kilogram. So we can write this G is equal to, that is Newton meter square per kilogram square. So hence this unit verified. Now let us see what is the meaning of center of mass. The center of mass of an object is the point inside or outside the object at which the total mass of the object can be assumed to be concentrated. Means in this figure, if we will see all this figure, there is a center of mass that is shown with the help of blue point. So this center of mass is the point inside or outside the object, and where the total mass of the object can be assumed to be concentrated, means total mass of the object will concentrated to this blue point for all this figure. The center of mass of spherical object having uniform density is at its geometrical center. For spherical object, the center of mass will be at its geometrical center. The center of mass of any object having uniform density is at its centroid. Means the center of mass for any object, if that is having uniform density, then it will be at the center only. So that is called as center of mass. Now next topic is uniform circular motion or magnitude of centripetal force. Now consider an object moving in a circle with a constant speed. So in the figure, this object is moving in the circular position and with the constant speed. We have seen earlier that such a motion is possible only when the object is constantly acted upon by a force directed towards the center of the circle. So when there is a formation of centripetal force in this circular motion, then only there is a formation of this constant speed in that object. So if m is the mass of the object, v is the speed of the object and r is the radius of the circle, then centripetal force capital F is equal to mv square upon r. So we can say that there is a formula for centripetal force capital F is equal to mv square upon r. Now suppose a planet is revolving around the sun in a circular orbit in uniform circular motion, then the centripetal force acting on the planet towards the sun is given by, that force will be centripetal force only. So it is given by capital F is equal to mv square upon r. This is equation number 1, where m is the mass of the planet, v is the speed of the planet and r is the distance of the planet from the sun. The speed of the planet can be expressed in terms of the period of revolution t as follows. So the distance traveled by the planet in one revolution means they are completing one orbit. So it is equal to perimeter of the orbit and that is given by 2 pi r. So here r is the distance of the planet from the sun and time taken is equal to period of revolution, that is equal to t. But we know children, speed is equal to distance travelled upon time taken. We know distance travelled upon time taken, that is called as speed, that we have studied in the standard 9th. So here speed is given by v is equal to 2 pi r upon t. This is equation number 2. Now we got the value of v, that is v is equal to 2 pi r upon t. So this is equation number 2. This equation number 2 we have to put in equation 1. So equation 1 is f is equal to mv square upon r. So instead of v we have to put here, that is 2 pi r upon t. So is equal to m into bracket 2 pi r upon t bracket square upon r as it is. So here to numerator there is 1 r and to denominator there is another r. So this 1 r will get cancelled with this 1 r. So what is remaining children? 4m. We have to solve this bracket. 2 square is what? 4. Then m as it is, pi square is pi square into r upon t square. So now we have to multiply and divide by r square to both numerator and denominator. So after dividing we get capital F is equal to 4m pi square upon r square into r cube. To numerator 1 r is remaining. So 1 r into r square it will become r cube upon t square. So this is equation number 3. So therefore according to Kepler's third law, we know children t square upon r cube is equal to k, that is constant. But here in equation 3 we got r cube upon t square. So this r cube upon t square will become 1 upon k. So this 1 upon k value we have to put in equation number 3. So therefore equation 3 becomes capital F is equal to 4m pi square upon r square into 1 upon k. So is equal to F is equal to 4m pi square upon r square into k. But here 4m pi square into k, this is one of the constant. So it is equal to constant. So therefore what is remaining, children? Capital F is equal to 1 upon r square, and therefore this capital F, that is gravitational force, is directly proportional to 1 upon r square. I hope, children, you all have understood this expression. Now use your brain power. Is there a gravitational force between two objects kept on a table, or between you and your friend sitting next to you? If yes, why don't the two forces not moving towards each other? So for this, answer is yes, there is a gravitational force between two objects that are kept on a table. Suppose on a table there is a book and there is a duster. Okay, so in book and duster there is a gravitational force, but they are not moving towards each other because the force between duster and book, that is very weak. Same answer for you and your friend. You and your friend, which friend? That sitting next to you. In between that there is a gravitational force, but then also this friend is not moving towards you, or you are not moving towards your friend, because this force is also very weak, and due to that they are not moving, but there is a gravitational force, but that intensity of gravitational force is very weak. I hope you got this answer. Now today's homework: state and explain Kepler's three laws. Second question: show that gravitational force capital F is directly proportional to 1 upon r square. And third question: state the Newton's universal law of gravitation. All these three question answers we have seen, children, but if you have any doubt, you can watch the video again. Thank you, children, for watching the video and for your attention.